I go for a walk with my wife down to the coffee shop near us. And I'm just like, the whole time, like, I'm fucked. Like, this is the end, like the CMO said something to me and I asked him for a phone call, but it was just one of those moments of like real, like panic, like a long period of just like, I am such an idiot. I'm getting fired. I was horrified. Still am thinking about it, frankly.
That is my guest today, Ty Magnin. Ty's got an amazing story. He's a marketer turned CEO, which I feel like you don't hear about all that often. So Ty was the head of marketing at Appcues for many years. He started and scaled the marketing team there before leading content and web marketing at UiPath. He was part of their journey from Series B through IPO. And today, Ty's the CEO at Animalz, which is a content marketing agency that supports B2B SaaS companies. I've known Ty for many years. We met back in 2015 when he was leading marketing at Appcues and I was leading growth at Wistia. We've kept in touch over the years. So it was super fun to have him on the show and hear about some of his speed bumps and adversity and the mistakes that he's made along the way. We got into all of it. He talked about the time when he stepped on some political landmines, when he first started at UiPath and was kind of used to being a member of a startup, and now he's at a much larger company and some of the mistakes that he made there. He shared the time when he was almost positive he was about to get fired and the tough conversation that he had with his CMO who helped him right the ship. And we talked about how in the world he's able to define success and find balance during this next chapter of his career as a CEO, as a dad to a couple young kiddos, as someone who's trying to figure out when is enough and find time for hobbies and fun and when to push and when to pull back. We got into all of it. It's enough from me. Let's jump into the conversation and hear from Ty.
Okay, so when I was in school, like grade school, I was really good at math naturally. Didn't have to try, got A's, that kind of thing. I'm sure it would be different now, but at the time, that's how it was. And English was a little harder for me. And so for whatever reason, I decided that was the avenue I should like pursue, like really focusing on English and sort of the arts, if you will. So I started getting into poetry when I was like in 7th grade and 8th grade. Yeah, I started writing a lot, reading a lot. I ended up doing an independent study in poetry. I went to a prep school that had a lot of like flexibility. I also had a kid when I was in high school, so I needed a lot of flexibility in my calendar. So these two things played well together. So for my senior year, I was both raising Jaden, or helping raise Jaden, and studying poetry just like with help from an advisor pretty independently most days. So that then like became what I was interested in college, was like English and film. I study film. And so I guess this like kind of like arts creative background is ultimately what kind of pushed me into marketing. So when I was in Boston as a college student, I started freelancing for different tech companies. Actually, like I somehow like entered into the tech community to do freelance video for some like startups and some like VC programs. And I was a little rebellious and still like artsy, I guess, at that time. And so something that appealed to me about those startups was like, oh, this isn't like wear a suit and go to work, like stiff corporate type businesses. Like these are young guys that are like doing something a little different. And that appealed to me enough that I decided, one, I'm graduating college. I need money, right? I've got a kid I've got to feed. And like pursuing film is like, gosh, I don't know how that's going to work out for me. But startups, like, they seem to have some money and maybe I could do that. So I ended up finding my way into a startup there in New York City, actually, and working my way up from there.
And did you have intention to get into film initially? What's the film school that's like right in Boston? Did you go to that school?
Went to BU. Oh, you're thinking like Emerson, maybe?
I was thinking Emerson, which is like a film first school.
Yeah, something like that. BU had a good film program. I mean, like you're going to school, all your peers are talking about going into film, right? Like I wanted to do documentary film production, but like I just realized it was not going to pay the bills, and it was going to be like 10 years of like traveling around and like, which is a dream I sort of let go of because there's something romantic still about that for me. But, the real pressures of like, got a kid, got to stay local led me to just join a startup.
Dude, when I was coming up, I actually wanted to go to Emerson. I was like, I was into skateboarding, I was into snowboarding, hadn't got into surfing yet, but like I was on that trajectory. And a big part of the culture of those activities is like, you film it, you make little clips and you make
Sure.
videos and you post them online. And so I was heavy into that world, but I was a hobbyist. And like, I think I knew at a young age, it was like, this is a hard job. And I think I like it as a hobby, not as a job. So it's interesting that you kind of saw it maybe from a different lens, but like came to a similar conclusion. It's like why I initially got into marketing. I was like, oh, marketing will be creative and cool. And, then I got into all the numbers stuff, but it started with that same romanticism.
Yeah. Did you have advice from anybody that was like, hey, like Andrew, maybe this is better as a hobby, or did you come up with that on your own?
I think my parents were hoping I would come to that conclusion because I think this was during an era where I think nowadays, with YouTube and all the different social media platforms, I think nowadays that would be a very viable career path and probably a lucrative one. But this was kind of before that. And I think they were sort of like, look, you're into these activities, which are really young person activities. Probably at some point you'll stop doing these. Your body won't like that you do these activities. You'll get into other things and this skill set may not be quite as applicable. But I think they knew like if they pushed that on me, I was going to push back. And so I think I got there on my own.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just thinking about those parenting dynamics now. Now my son who I had when I was 17 is now 18, right? And it's like he wants to study psychology, and I think that's great. And on one hand, it's like follow your passions, but on the other, it's like, make sure that you have an informed perspective on what it actually looks like day to day to be a practicing psychologist, so that you kind of you try it on and know what you're getting into. Anyways, just thinking about how to do that artful manipulation as a parent or just support, I should call it. I'm kind of being tongue in cheek.
Did you listen to your parents?
Never.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no fucking way. So I already know with my son, he's so stubborn. No fucking way he's going to listen to me either. So I'm not there yet. He's 4.5, but I already know he's going to be the same way. I'm sure Jaden's the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they come back. Like it's really hard to open up that space. I think at least for me, it's been hard to open up that space with Jaden, especially through middle school. I think like sophomore, junior year on, like we've been able to create some of that space. And it's usually like a long drive back from a ski trip, or something like this, where it's like, okay, now there just seems like, okay, we've bonded. We don't have to like stare at each other across the table and have a hard conversation. It's like, we're looking in the same direction. This is what my coach tells me. That's like when you can ask the big life things and have a bit, people are open, you can have that impact then. So the window doesn't open all the time, but like, yeah, it comes and goes through phases.
Yeah. And so take me back to your journey. So you're into film, you're into production, you start getting into startups, you start getting into marketing. Is there a moment when you're like, hey, maybe I got something here? Like maybe this is a thing that I should keep doing. I see the next step in this journey and like I kind of want to get there. Like, is there a moment like that for you?
I think I was always a little arrogant. I was always a little arrogant and just was overconfident, in my 20s. And so, I'd see leaders in positions of power where they're getting paid well and was kind of like, I could do this better than they could without fully realizing, or appreciating really what made them great, how much work it took to get there. Like these are people that went to business school, that like read all the books, that like have a lot of gifts that I didn't. And so it was more about like my ego, I think, that drove me forward, if I'm being honest, than having any sort of clarity. It was mostly just like climb the ladder, make money, make an impact, that kind of thing.
If you lead a growth or product team, I promise you're going to want to hear this. Fullstory, which has been one of the core tools consistently in my tech stack over the last 10 years, just built a couple new products. They've got Story AI and Workforce I'm excited to tell you about, and they are quietly becoming a powerhouse for anybody who's building digital experiences. I'll explain what that means and why it matters. So Fullstory helps you capture what users do, the behavior that people take on your website or inside of your product, things like where they click, where they copy, where they might rage click, where they zoom in, where they zoom out, all that good stuff. And they help turn that into insights that you and your team can use to make decisions and scope out projects and experiments. And this is kind of the core product that my team used on a weekly basis over the last 10 years. So now they have a new product called Story AI, which is AI. It doesn't just spit out reports. It actually analyzes all of your behavior, and then it flags friction, services patterns, and it gives you recommendations before you even know there's an opportunity or there's a problem, which sounds amazing. And they've got another new product called Workforce, where you can finally see some of the tools your internal teams are actually using and where their workflows are getting stuck and flags. You can cut out some of the wasted spend and help them move faster. Fullstory is now behavioral data that helps you build better experiences, both for your users and your customers, and your internal employees. You can go to fullstory.com/value, check out the whole new portfolio. That is fullstory.com/value to see their portfolio. And so you know what I want to do on this show. You know I want to dig into some of the tougher moments and the speed bumps and normalize and inspire and help kind of the next generation coming up. So I'm curious for you, as you get going, continue on in your marketing career, you have a couple great stops along the way. Can you tell us about a tough decision that you've had to navigate along the way from beginning in your marketing journey to eventually becoming CEO at Animalz? What comes to mind?
I don't know if I can give you tough decisions, but I can give you like formative moments that pushed me to where I'm at. I think, okay, a few came to mind. I think about like transitions to and from companies as kind of like what pushed me into this or out of that. Moving to Appcues was based on being an early user of the product. So I was working at Work Market. I was like in charge of product marketing and digital and a couple of different things. The New York City company, had a buddy, John Shear, a mutual friend now, who was the first sales hire at Appcues. And I just took an interest in like, other startups, what my friends are doing, of course, and found that I could actually use this tool and get some value from it. And I thought it was like nifty enough, right? And plus like there was a role there for me to like go lead marketing, figure this thing out with a buddy, start earlier stage, like it's kind of like our company opportunity. So that was one big reason why I made the leap. And I think at the core of that, it's like a team of people like where you have a connection, you kind of know what you're getting into, ownership over something that was important to me. And then also I had used the product. Like, I sort of felt like I understood the value. I understood the audience because I felt like I was at the time. That did evolve, by the way. So marketers, like, be warned. Not that it was a bad thing, but like you are not always your target audience. You got to kind of separate those two things out eventually.
I just want to contextualize. How large was Appcues when you joined?
2 founders, Jonathan and Jackson, John, Ray. I think we just had 1 developer, maybe 2. So we all fit inside like this. My little office here is probably like, I don't know, 10 by 10 or something. Like all of us were squeezed inside a conference room in it was in the Davenport, like HubSpot's building. Because our VC was accomplice that like had one of the floors there.
Dude, I was probably in the building at the same time, just on a different floor. I was working at HubSpot then.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. That was like 2014, something around then.
And had you ever been to a company that small before?
No, I mean, when I started at Work Market, we were 30 people. So it was a startup for sure. When I left, we were like 100 people. But no, I mean, this was like special. It was like really early on. Precious. I mean, I just loved the time I had at Appcues.
Cool. And so you join Appcues super early, 4 people in a 10 by 10 room in the Davenport. How did you know that that was a risk worth taking? Like, that's one of the things I'm always curious about, right? So it ends up becoming a major stepping stone for you and propels you to go off and do these great things right afterwards. But like objectively a fairly risky move. Obviously John was there and you'd use the product, but any 4-person company, super high risk. How in the world did you make that and come to that conclusion, make that decision?
I think it was mostly gut stuff. One piece was like, at that time, I needed to move back to Boston to be closer to Jaden, right? My son, he just needed more support. I was living in New York and commuting back all the time, and it just wasn't a good long-term setup. So there was like that life element that was important. And then the rest, like, I don't know, man. It was just a little bit of gut, a little bit of luck. I mean, in a sense, you look at why did Appcues give me that opportunity? I mean, I was a little crazy too, right? Like there was nothing proven about this company in a way. It was so early stage. So I don't know. It was just mostly feel. And then the next decision I made was to leave Appcues at a time where the company was doing great, right? Flash forward 3.5 years, something like that. We went from a couple dollars a month in revenue to like, we were at probably 7 million at the time in ARR, growing pretty quickly. So like solid run. I had a large I mean, I had like, I don't know, 10 people on the marketing team. So it felt like, I got to build that from scratch, right? So these are like all my people, great culture, great office, and like so many reasons not to go. But my old boss, so the guy from Work Market who I ended up working for, Diego Lamonto, he's now the CMO over at Writer. He called me up and was like, dude, I just joined this company in Romania. It might even been before he started. Based out of Romania, like it's growing. It's just, he told me some of the numbers, like they got to 40 million from like 10 million last year. And they're poised to do like 120 in the next 12 months. And like, just all the things he said, I was sort of like, all right, cool. But like, I'm not interested, but then like you think about it a little bit. And I'm like, well, how much would that pay? Right. And so
Yeah.
basically like making me an offer I couldn't say no to, big jump in comp, like equity that actually did turn into something, an interesting role, et cetera, et cetera. Plus I could work remotely. And, my wife and I had always wanted to move to California. So we were trying to make that happen. And that's what the next 4 years look like, right? So jumped to UiPath, had a pretty amazing run from 40 million up through $1 billion in revenue in an IPO, led a large content and web team there. Was super different culturally, right? From like at Appcues, I guess we were 70 people or something when I left. Like now we're talking about a few thousand people at the company. We can get into that if you want, but yeah, that was another sort of, I guess, why did I make that decision? One, again, it was like, well, I'm working with someone that I like know, trust, and admire. And then the other piece was like the lifestyle, the remote thing, right? Mattered to me. It was kind of rare at the time. We're talking 2018. And then 3, it was the money, right? Like it was like, all right, we're going to pay you a lot more than you're getting paid now. This equity might actually be meaningful. And then there's, a bunch of other stuff like that. And again, I've got a kid. Like this was a big deal. It's like, all right, well, this might be a meaningful life change for him.
And how do you think through, like one of the things that would run through my mind if I was in that situation was, well, at Appcues, I'm the head of, right? I'm the head of this capability. I'm growing it. It hasn't outgrown me. This is my thing. I'm the person who's done this, to now being part of a much larger thing. So you go from a small pond being a big fish to a much larger pond and being, I don't know what size fish you were in that pond, but like you weren't the largest one. No. So I feel like there's like a tension in that decision. Did you feel any of that? I don't mean to project if you didn't, but it more just that's what would go through my head.
Yeah, definitely. And I probably didn't let that sink in as much as I should have, right? Because I went into UiPath with a bit of like, I was pretty ambitious and again, a little like egotistical, right? Like an arrogant and trying to like always up my role in like power grab and all these things. It was kind of ugly. Like there are moments that I'm not proud of there for how I behaved and some colleagues that I know I pissed off along the way. So yeah, I didn't think enough about that. I did realize though, like, I don't know, what was I, 27, maybe 28 at the time, something like this. Like I realized that I'd never worked with polished senior CMO level marketing leaders. And at UiPath, like there were all the VPs of marketing had the CMO title before. Like this was like a pretty powerful group of marketing leaders that have been there, done that, accomplished a lot. And we're coming together to like really help accelerate the growth of this like pretty promising company. And so I did get to absorb a lot from so many different marketing leaders. I mean, our CMO, the actual CMO, Bobby Patrick, was just amazing. I mean, really helped build a market and like build a lot of momentum behind this company with the way he approached marketing. I mean, my boss, after a while, after I left Diego's leadership, was she's the SVP of brand or something like that. Mary Tetlow was like just like one of the best brand marketers in the world. Like I haven't done the study, but like guaranteed. And working under her was fascinating. So there was like that upside to it. But yeah, I was a small fish. I think they saw me as like high potential, but like probably also kind of an idiot because I like didn't know a ton about like how, like I took on the web team without really knowing how to manage like what became like a 20-person web team. And so there was a lot of like times where I fell flat on my face at this job. But I think that the team, supported me enough to like let me get up, dust myself off and like try again. So there's a lot of like humbling experiences there for sure.
And what's interesting is it sounds like going in, you didn't have some master plan. Like there wasn't you weren't overly concerned with the optics of like, well, I was the head of marketing and now I'm going to this company where I'm like a director of a team or a senior manager. I don't know whatever your initial title was, but director, it sounds like you weren't overly stressed on that. You were just looking at the next chapter of your career. It seemed like a good fit for a bunch of reasons. Some of those were outside of work. Some of those were inside the office. And for those reasons, it made sense. And so you just made the move.
Yeah. But then I think that at the time I was sort of okay with those things. But the role I accepted, it was initially to lead a product marketing content team under Diego. And I was like, oh, this role is too small for me. And so like I went into it immediately thinking about like, okay, how do I make this into the global content team? Which I did, but I broke a few eggs along the way. Yeah. And then like took on more as I just like following my ambitions. But I wouldn't recommend doing that, right? If you're going to accept a role at a company, you should be excited about that role, not about like some grander vision that you hope you can manipulate your way into. I think that was a mistake. But I don't know. It's also like it's all worked out, right? So
Yep.
I guess if I could have been more clear about expectations going in, both mine and theirs, that could have helped create more alignment from the jump, which would have been healthy and good.
So you mentioned that you made a few mistakes. I think you said had a couple ugly moments along the way.
Yeah.
Without sharing, what comes to mind as you think of that? Obviously, don't share anything that you're not comfortable sharing publicly. You don't have to share anybody's name, but like, what's a mistake that if you could go back in time, you would advise yourself to do differently?
One that I think I've talked about before, at least with people I'm close with. So when I took on the web team, in addition to this content team, there's a bunch of crap with the website that would seem like glaringly obvious in terms of like it just being non-optimized or like weird or just like needed change. So one of those was the navigation. Like the navigation when I inherited the website was just like screwy. It didn't make sense. It didn't like look like other SaaS companies and needed some change, right? At least this is my perspective. Without really like consulting people, right? It was like me, probably like our head of project management and maybe a developer. We just changed the nav and I deploy the thing. And it's like, hey guys, like new nav, you're welcome. And I got my ass kicked by some senior folks, some people that were sort of like more peers to me about, hey, well, did you talk to these people? And did you think through the implication of that and this and that? And I realized really quickly, like, one, like who my stakeholders were, because I didn't quite know until then. And then two, like the expectation of this web role that is so central to a company, right? Every team in a company has some web page or two that they care about, like even legal, even finance, maybe not finance, but like everyone else, has a horse in the race. And so I quickly learned, not without ruffling other feathers along the way, by the way, like how to coordinate these not large projects, they could be small projects, but like how to really coordinate those across a large organization, which is a skill that like I didn't have at the time because I was working in a small startup, but it was one that was valuable just to kind of know how to get buy-in, how to like build a case, how to present that case to the right people and then like make the change. But it's big company shit, right? Like it was like, all right, I learned this thing, but like, do I really want to keep doing this for the rest of my career?
Right.
And short answer was probably not.
What's interesting is probably at Appcues, that would have got you kudos, right? Like what's the phrase? It's like act now, ask for forgiveness later type of thing.
Exactly.
Like I feel like that is the ethos of working at an early stage company. Totally. So it sounds like you had to reprogram a little bit and like retool.
Yes, completely. And it did help me become a better leader, right? To like learn how to build those cases, like document things, bring in the right stakeholders. And when you learn how to do that, like the end result often is better. It might take a little longer to get there. But when it's done well, like it's actually a good asset. And I do think that I'm able to bring some of that to Animalz. And I've seen people who like don't have that in their DNA and are kind of having to learn it now. And, now I have that perspective to be able to coach them up too, which is nice.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the show. If you are, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. The data shows something like 40% of the people who listen to the show are actually subscribed. It is the best way for you to support the show, and it helps the algorithm find other listeners who are just like you. If you're feeling generous, a quick rating or review makes a huge difference as well. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. Now let's get back to this episode. Is there a moment when you're at UiPath and you realize like, shit, I just stepped in it. Like I made this change, I pushed it out. Is it like that first Slack message? Like, is there a moment like that or is it like a slow drip?
No, it's like pretty violent over the next 6 hours of like, people coming out of the woodwork to be like, what the fuck? This is broken, this or that. You start getting attention from people like you didn't want the attention of, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, when you stepped in it for sure. At least at a culture that like has those kind of like, it's not going to be soft and pretend it's all good, right? Like they were very clear about their expectations.
And so what goes through your mind over those 6 hours? So stuff starts happening. You start getting the slacks. Probably somebody sets up like a war room type meeting and you get called into it. Like, are you worried you're going to get fired at this time? But like, what are you thinking about?
There have been instances where I was a little anxious about that. This wasn't one of them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was a war room for this. I mean, the first message you get, you're kind of like, oh yeah, like, okay, like it's one person, like, you know, what I did, like I still believe in what I did, that kind of thing. And then it starts to compile and you're like, oh fuck, like the team in France, like has their French site is asking about like what the hell just changed. SEO is sort of like, well, did you think about all the SEO implications? And the answer is like, no. So like, okay. And so it starts to snowball. And then you're like, oh wow, I went from like resisting, you know, kind of like, oh, well, it's just this person, like they don't know what they're talking about, to like, oh shit, like I really did mess this up. Like this isn't the relationship that I want to have with you, to each stakeholder. You kind of explain your thinking and your logic around what, like your rationale behind it. They probably poke a few holes, but ultimately it was like, well, like kind of get it too. But I really had to like fall on the sword and be like, hey, like yeah, you're right. I fucked this up. I didn't talk to you guys. But also like I'm new here. Like I don't know who to talk to, and you know, so like nice to meet you, stakeholders. And you know, how should we now proceed? Like, how do I keep you in the loop? So about projects like this in the future. You know, one of the values at UiPath was being humble. I don't think I was humble all the time. Again, I was quite arrogant in a lot of my behavior. And even this one is a good example of that. But I did learn a little bit about how to be humble and really ask more questions and know what you don't know and so on. Yeah, being humble helped me like turn that kind of situation around.
And so how does somebody handle the next play, so to speak, when this kind of situation happens? Because I'm sure there's going to be people listening to the show.
Yeah.
The details will be different, but like everybody fucks up at work. And one of the challenges in my experience is like when you have a major screw up at work, one of two things can happen. Either you hold on to it and other people hold on to it, and then it like erodes your trust and it makes it hard for you to have an impact, and you're like working scared and you're not able to be as impactful because of that, or you let it go. And that's kind of a skill and maybe requires a little bit of tact and like some tough conversations. And so I'm curious for you, how did you work through it? And then what would be your advice to someone listening to this who's nodding their head like, well, the details are different, but I've done something kind of similar here so they can learn from this?
Now, I'm sort of curious to flip it on you and ask for how you would coach someone through it. But at that time, again, I said there was some resistance, some arrogance, but also some level of humility and like realizing kind of what happened and what I didn't do well. And so there was the opportunity to reestablish the conversations and start building some of those like workflows and rituals so people knew what was going on with the web team, and so that I was looping them in to get their input, that kind of thing. But yeah, my confidence, I wouldn't say it was shattered, but it was like temporarily, you know, a bit broken. And so I don't know, just tried to move forward, right? It's like you try and learn, you probably stay a little arrogant because that's just the way it is. And then you also are a little less confident than you were, right? Which might be a good thing too, because you're like trying to think about other people and different perspectives as you move forward. So it's like, I mean, if I could do it perfectly, it would look different, right? But my honest is like, it's a mix of all those things, you know, like, all right, I did kind of change the direction a little bit and change some behavior, but not all of it. There are other issues that came up 12 months later that looked a lot like this.
And what about with your stakeholders, your boss, the people who were giving you attention that you didn't want the attention from? Did it take any time, or were there any direct conversations where you tried to kind of rebuild trust with them?
I think it was mostly just like, so yes, definitely. There were a lot of one-on-one conversations after this with each of those like high-level stakeholders. And it was really about me honestly trying to learn. Like one, like my boss was very helpful in holding the mirror up to me and like helping me see like what just went down, because maybe it wasn't that clear at the time. And then by just listening and talking through it, right, and like offering up some actions after that, I think we were able to find a path forward. And it was similar with like, there was the other SVP of demand gen that was one of these stakeholders that didn't want the attention of, like similar conversation there too.
Yeah. So you mentioned something happened 12 months later. What was that?
Oh man, do I want to talk about this one? Yeah, okay. The SEO team at the time, the SEO team didn't sit under web, but the SEO team like needs web to like breathe. Like I truly do believe like if I were to draw up an architecture for what the ideal large marketing team would be, you tuck SEO somewhere under web or digital, right? Or something like this. And so I was working with a consultant who is like this Ogilvy based consultant who had a lot of like respect in the organization, who helped me build the case for why SEO should live under web. Okay. And I had this like little doc sitting on my desktop browser for some time of like, all right, like I'll start making the case to my boss and like figure it out. Cause I genuinely believe this could be better for the organization. I also recognized that part of my motivation was for the power of like building my little fiefdom, right? It's gross, but it's true.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the realities, right? If you work at a company and you're ambitious and you're an A player, you're always going to want to take a little bit more, and to get a little bit more means you kind of have to play the game a little bit. Like, I don't always think that's a bad thing to have that ambition. That's why they hired you, right? That's what makes you great. I mean, I feel like you've used negative adjectives. You're like, oh, I had ego and I had this, but like you also had ambition and hustle and heart and like passion. And so you take the good and the bad, right? It's like our superpowers are often our kryptonite. Just depends on the lens.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yeah, you're right. I'm beating myself up a little bit because these are moments I'm not proud of. But like, yeah, there's something got me here. So you're right. Not exactly the same things, but sometimes they're hard to separate. So, okay, I have this doc on my desktop. I just like one day was cleaning up my desktop and I like uploaded a bunch of docs into the cloud. It was like some Microsoft cloud, I forgot, SharePoint or something. I don't know, like a couple days later, of course, our head of SEO sees this thing and is like, what the fuck is this? Immediately sends it to our CMO, and I think I'm getting fired. Like, I remember.
Did you know that you uploaded it? Like, did you mean to upload it, or did it kind of get lost in the folder?
I did not mean to upload it. I didn't really know. I was like, okay, she found this thing. Like, how the fuck? Oh, wait. Okay. Like, it all clicked quickly.
Oh, man. Okay.
This was like, right after the IPO or before the IPO. So like, there was like a lot of money on the line, like millions. And I go for a walk with my wife down to the coffee shop near us. And I'm just like, the whole time, like, I'm fucked. Like, this is the end, like the CMO said something to me and I asked him for a phone call, but it was just one of those moments of like real, like panic, like a long period of just like, I am such an idiot. I'm getting fired. I was horrified. Still am thinking about it, frankly. But Bobby was graceful and, we chatted for a while. He sort of told me like, basically his whole principle is like, he told me a story from his past, which I don't think I have permission to share, but like, made a similar kind of power move issue. He literally is actually, I'll share this part. It's a good story. His boss, this was a long while ago, slapped him in the face. He was probably 20 years old or something like this. He gets slapped in the face from his
a different
boss,
era.
This woman. Yeah. And she was like, Bobby, like you will never talk shit or whatever it is, like about your colleagues, something like this. And so he passed that on to me and I'm sort of like, yeah, like carrying that forward, like these are your comrades, like you're in battle together, and this head of SEO was to me, right? Like I really fucked up the relationship by doing this thing. And it just showed me a really ugly side of myself, I think, that luckily I didn't get fired over, but I certainly had to spend some time trying to repair that relationship. And it never quite got back to where it was, probably, if we're being honest. But it's something that I've learned from since. I do think about all these grain recorders and like Otter and all these like call recorders that are, in private conversations. And I'm constantly thinking about like, and one day I'm sure I'll say something that's like going to rub someone the wrong way. Cause like it's all kind of out there. Right. So anyways, hey kids, like, don't do what I did. Like, if you're going to build the case for something like that, like keep it in a notebook, don't upload it to the cloud. Like, it's a reasonable thing to do maybe, but like just handle it the right way. You're playing with fire. So.
And so your CMO shared the story, kind of they're contextualizing the mistake that you had made and used the sort of almost like a military analogy, like, hey, we're on the same unit here. That's like a fellow lieutenant or whatever, like they're on our squad sort of a vibe.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, that was maybe my language, not his. I can't remember exactly.
Sure. Yeah. But that was sort of the energy behind it, basically.
Yeah, totally. Like this
That's
is your
really
teammate,
interesting. Because I just feel like the opposite is more common. Like, I don't think anyone has ever, I'm just trying to reflect on my own journey. Like, I don't think anyone's ever told me that. And I feel like often what happens as like a byproduct of your own ambition and like maybe a little bit of trying to cover your own ass a lot of the time is you work against other teams with the best of intentions, right? You might think you're working with them, but really you're kind of working and looking out for yourself. And I think that's more common. So it's just interesting that he pulled you aside, he shared that story, normalized the challenge that you made and shifted your perspective on the situation. Sounds like it was helpful based on the way you're reflecting on it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that back to me. Yeah, man, listen, Bobby Patrick is a legendary CMO, and his leadership is like probably the best I'd seen in that seat up close. I think that what you're taking away about how he sees teams working together, not against one another, is like a big part of the culture that he built at UiPath, or, seeked to build, minus my moment there. And I think it's powerful, right? Like, I think that's what a winning team looks like, right? Look at the Celtics, right? We've got, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, like they learn to play with each other, right? Not trying to, it's not about who has the spotlight that night or the hot hand, right? Like, if it's Jaylen, like, cool, like JT's going to dish it to him, and vice versa.
Ubuntu, man. Do you remember that? That was from the '08 Celtics with Doc Rivers. They used to say Ubuntu. It's like we before I, like we before me type of a vibe. And it's so funny you mentioned the Celtics, man. I was watching, I think it was KG's Celtics jersey retirement, like when they hung his jersey and like retired his number. Scalabrine interviewed him. And he was like, KG, we played together many years in the Celtics. You played on other teams. I've never heard one story of you criticizing a teammate. And KG was like, oh, the way I was brought up, like, those are your soldiers. Like, I'm gonna ride with those guys. I will never criticize a teammate. And then Scal said, well, I heard you criticize Paul Pierce one time when Ginobili was burning him in like 2007, right? And KG was like, well, that one time he slipped the screen or whatever. And like, I just thought that was really like, it's funny that you mentioned the Celtics, right? There's a direct parallel to that. KG, I think about as one of the best leaders, probably, one of the top 5 best leaders in the NBA of all time, had the same perspective.
Yeah. Nice. Look at that. KG and Bobby Patrick, right? These guys have something in common.
Hey, if you're enjoying the stories on this show and feeling like you're ready to tackle some of your own hurdles, I'm here to help. If you didn't know already, I offer one-to-one coaching specifically for people who work on or around growth teams who want to have a bigger influence and impact in their roles. Maybe you're navigating some tough moments, whether it's managing your team or handling feedback. Maybe you just want to step into a bigger leadership role. Or maybe you're at a unicorn company today and you want to make sure that the company doesn't outgrow your skill set. Either way, I can help. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, head to deliveringvalue.co/coaching to learn a little bit more and set up a call with me to see if we jive. All right, enough from me. Back to the episode. So you said there's been times when I got feedback that I'm like a fire and needed to focus my energy more like a laser. And I was curious if you could share a little bit more about the background to that story and like what you got from it and how it landed on you.
Yeah, so it's kind of a fortune cookie feedback, that I think about sometimes. This is Jonathan Kim. He was the founder of Appcues. We were sitting, remember outside Davenport, like there's a little like pond with a fountain and stuff?
Right next to the mall.
Yeah, like across the street. Yeah, exactly. So we're sitting at a bench there, a nice day. And yeah, he just kind of drops that on me. He's like, okay, Ty, like your energy is like right now, it's like a fire, right? Like it's bright, it's hot, but like what you need to do is like focus it into, a laser. And I think it's just a conversation basically saying like, hey, you got to like prioritize things better, which is like generally good feedback. And the metaphor was like good and memorable. Like I kind of imagine that was like, Jonathan worked for David Cancel at, what was it, Performable before he sold it into HubSpot, something like that. Yep. And so like, I just imagine it was like DC's feedback to Jonathan and it was like passed on to me, which is like, it's cool. I remember it because it's a good metaphor, but like it doesn't, and it's always good feedback, like it's always, it's like always good to think about that.
But it wasn't like there was some situation that led to that moment where it all made sense later when you looked at it in a different lens.
No, it's kind of like, Andrew, if I told you today, like, listen, man, you really got to prioritize and focus on what's important. You'd be like, oh, shit, you're right. Like that feedback is always relevant in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one more story that was formative for me. Can I go back to this one?
Dude, let's do it. Yeah.
Because I think this one's important for folks to consider. And I think you might dig it too. So I've been at UiPath, I don't know, 3.5 years. I was almost fully vested on the first round of stock I got. We hit this IPO. It was a $50 billion IPO. Okay. I look at like my paper money, right? Like look into the account and there's a big fucking number in there, right?
Without sharing the number, is it new car money? Is it down payment on a house money? Or is it a little bit more than that?
More. It's like second house money, you know?
Amazing.
Yeah. For the moment. I mean, listen, UiPath stock, go look at the ticker. Like it's not where it was. And I didn't sell as much as I should have at the top, right? I mean, what the fuck did I know? You can't time the market.
Hindsight, dude. I did the same thing with HubSpot. I got down payment money on a house and then it went up 10x after that's just life.
Yeah, it's just like, I figure in life, like you'll get lucky on timing sometimes, you'll get unlucky on timing other times, and it'll all even out for the most part over a lifetime.
And you deserve it for what it's worth, right? So you worked hard to get there. You talked about some of the shit you had to overcome. I don't mean to put you on blast and ask you how much money you got, but right, we get lucky. Some of this stuff is luck, some of it's hard work. And like when the two meet, there's amazing upside working in tech. That's why it's so hard.
Yeah, that's right. But the point is like, I'm looking at this money, you know? Some like, you know, I've been sort of chasing making a bunch of money like my whole life, right? It seems cool. And I just realized in this moment, I'm like, yo, this didn't solve anything for me. Like it didn't change anything. I'm not a better person. My kid doesn't love me more, right? My wife doesn't love me more. Like it's kind of like fun and cool, I guess, but it really made me realize like this thing I've been chasing for so long didn't really do shit for me. And it's like the wrong thing that I've been chasing. Of course, like to an extent, having some money can like solve some real problems, right? But like after a certain point, like, I don't know, 100K a year, I don't know what that number is, right? It's probably different for everybody, and I think this is proven, like happiness doesn't improve after that point. And so like I started going down the path, like, okay, I gotta like, you know, find a executive coach and like these sort of things, like really ask some deeper questions here and help me explore these things. And so that was like a big pivot in my journey too. Also away from startups was like eventually like, all right, like I want to do something, maybe not be, I don't know. There's a lot that went into this decision, but like, yeah, basically it set me on the next set of journeys that I've been on, which has been interesting.
And so you had a goal, you got there, right? At least on paper.
Yeah.
And then it felt unfulfilling. Is that sort of the high level?
Yeah. Like it doesn't like.
And then you kind of had to revisit what success looked like a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. It's like, is success making a bunch of money and like working in this way in order to get there? Or is there a different definition of success that means more to me? And the answer is really clear. It's not about the number, you know, in your portal. Like it's whatever it is to you. But like for me, it's about impact on the world and like to the people I love, like love me and know that I love them, like these things.
And so what changes for you after that? I mean, you talk about a refocus, but what does that mean for you, the professional, after this moment?
Maybe not enough. Like maybe I don't think about this moment enough because it's pretty easy to get back on the like, let's make some money. You and I were talking about this as we started. It's like, that was one of the first things I shared. I'm like, well, you know, it's good. Like Animalz is doing well, revenue, profit, you know. What did it change? I mean, working with a life coach, I think has been a really big, I don't want to say luxury, but like a different growth journey that's let me explore myself a lot more, let me explore or just like learn about the impact I can have on other people and in the world. I do think that moving to the agency side has been in no small part a reaction to that moment of like, and being a CEO, right? Like I take a lot of meaning from having an impact on people, right? Like first it's my family, right? And then maybe friends, but like my kids are going to school every day. So like I got to have something to do while they're doing that. And having an impact on a business, you know, creating a culture there, right? Creating relationships that are of value and enduring, right? Like that's another way to do it, to have that legacy. So, you know, I think being in a C-level position kind of lets you have a bigger impact in that way. So yeah, that's part of why Animalz really resonates with me right now.
And how did that experience that you talked about with the accidental upload, and then you kind of have this tension with your SEO counterpart and the lesson that you learned from your CMO, how does that experience and some of the other ones that you shared earlier in our convo influence the type of CEO that you've become?
I mean, I suppose we're just the result of like all of our big formative experiences, you know? So it's tough to like weigh those within all of the experience I've had and describe it. But I do think I'm a leader that prioritizes their relationships more than others might. Like that really wants to know the people in the organization, know our customers, like, and just sincerely wants everyone to grow and thrive in the ways that they want. And I feel like I can help coach people a little bit to get there, right? Like I do think from my experience having a coach, he certainly helped me unlock a lot in myself. And I'd like to be able to pass that on to the team and other people that I get to touch and influence. So if you don't have a great coach, you should call up Andrew. But if you're great at content, you can come work in Animalz.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Dude, you recently posted something on LinkedIn. Here's what you wrote. I'm curious to get your take on this. You had an amazing photo at the side of the beach. You said, I spent the last week working half days from a rented surf van as an experiment, finding a little bit more flow and breaking up the work from home routine. And my initial thought my first thought was, fuck yeah, like amazing, little bit of FOMO. It was like middle of the winter, East Coast. So like, it's getting dark at 4 p.m. in Boston type of a thing. And then I was like, you know what? I wouldn't have thought as a CEO that you'd be able to have that kind of work-life balance. And so I was curious to hear how you're able to do that, or if that's always kind of been how you approach work and now you just happen to be the CEO, or if you've been really intentional about making sure that you get to refill your cup and to do things like that outside of just, because I imagine there's always more. There's probably always more you could be doing. And so to peel yourself away, I feel like you must have a little intention behind that.
Some weeks, maybe. A lot of weeks, I'm just like very driven as like a competitive achiever, like a Enneagram 3, I think. So I'm pretty easily sucked into the work that's in front of me. I want to get things off the list. Like I want to respond to people, etc. That surf van experiment, which was cool, was like the week of New Year's Day. It's like the slowest week in business ever, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, there's some balance there, but like most people aren't even working, right? For being honest. So yeah, I would, part of being a business owner, like part of the dream is like, oh, I can work when I want, not work when I want, right? Like, but I also want to have a really like growing and successful business and have an impact on these people like I've outlined. There are different tensions at play here. Most of the time I'm just like hard driving and like sitting at the computer, and I could probably use a little more time in the water, learning about, I don't know. For me, that's like where I celebrate all of life, right? It's like such a sanctuary for connecting with nature, and, even exercise puts me really into the present and into my body. And so I think I could use more of that, right? Just to sort of continue to progress myself as a leader and bring more joy to work and like spread that around. So yeah, a good reminder. Probably should do it more.
It's hard to know. And the second I always have goals to leave more slack in the line, because I just feel like when I have more slack in the line, I have more joy. And when I have more joy, I have more creativity and more focus and more intention. And for me, I've just learned like the energy that I give off is typically what I receive. And so when my energy is low because I've given too much of it I never leave work at the end of the day. When my kiddos come running up the stairs, I never leave my office being like, oh, I'm more energized than when I started the day. And so I have to do those things or else I just feel like not myself. And so that's why I was curious, like, because you've also got a family, right? You've got your son who's getting ready to go to college. You've got a 2-year-old. And so you've got a growing family as well, a young family. And so finding that balance has got to be hard. So I was curious how you manage it or if you have other systems that help.
I always feel like I can watch less TV, like kind of like eat less junk food, watch less TV. So the first thing my head always goes to is like, all right, like how can I cut down on that in order to get more done? Which could be like getting that workout in or whatever. I do find that like the best productivity hacks usually are like what you do when you're not at your desk. So it's getting that exercise, like taking good care of your family. So like there's no stress, nothing on your mind when you come to do work. But the thing about like, a lot of guys our age are like talking right now about like, oh, like having kids, like balancing the family, that kind of thing. Like I've been doing this since I was 17. Like I've always had to balance work with family, So in a way, I think I have a slight advantage or maybe significant in like, I don't really know anything else, I've always kind of kept those two things juggling.
From your vantage point, being that you've been a dad for certainly longer than I have, is there more acceptance and normalcy in 2025 for like working parents and the juggling act and the flexibility than there was when you started your career?
I can kind of only speak from my perspective. Like, and I think it's very different male to female. If I'm being honest, I think men are expected to work less now than before in a big way. Like I think when I think about my dad and mom, like my mom, she worked for a while, but then she would stay at home and like, dude, my dad would go on like 2-week business vacations, like not vacations, business trips. He'd be like gone a lot and he wouldn't be home for dinner like 3 nights a week. He'd go to the gym or whatever.
Yeah, mine too.
Right. Like that shit's not really normal anymore. Like I don't know. I don't want to tell people what to do, but I don't see my friends doing that. Like they're home for dinner. They're like helping cook. Like men are much more involved in the family life. And I'm sure the opposite's probably true with women. It's like maybe expectations change there. But I do think that, yeah, this whole sort of work-life balance, flexible thing means a lot of dads are working less, which is probably good. But some days I'm kind of like, I want to press, like, not that I'm like conservative or like regressivist, but it's like, I don't know, like I'm not going to be home. I got work to do, and like, I want that to be okay. But it's probably better that it's like the expectation is that I'll be home. I think that's probably better for everybody.
I go through these seesaw of emotions on this between like balancing my ambition with like loving the now type of a thing, where there's seasons when I want to press and then there's seasons when I want to relax. And sometimes like my goal might change within a given week where it's like, it might be like a hard start to the week. And I'm like, I'm just going to grind my way through it. Like, let's go. And then at the end of the week, I'm like, I think I got my priorities all wrong. And I don't have the answer to that. Like I struggle with that. I torment myself with that. It's hard. Yeah. And so I can only imagine being a CEO and having more accountability, frankly, than I have being a one-person business, than, to have employees and a board and all those other things. Probably that's amped up for you.
Yeah, but there's a luxury there, Andrew, where it's like you have to make that decision for you. And like arguably like I do for me too, but there's also like expectations, of like, hey, like Ty has to do these things this week because the business has to run. And like, so people expect things of me, which then kind of make it like, I don't really get to decide. Like, it's just the gravity of the thing. Do you know what I mean? Which is like, it's good in the way that I don't have to think day to day of like, should I press? Should I relax? It's like,
right.
Yeah,
it's dictated.
Yeah.
And so for you at this point in your career, what's next? Like, what's your goal at this stage in your career, right? Before we pressed record, we talked about the different types of wealth and the different ways you can define success. How do you think about it for this next chapter?
The first thing that comes to mind is like, I really want to help the team grow in the ways that they want to grow. So, we've got this awesome head of SEO. His name is Ideen, and he's not like at his ceiling yet. And he's just right now making moves and like, he's just in the right seat at the right time. And it's like, I just want to see this guy like reach his max potential because that's what he wants. And there are people like this that I'm like, all right, I want to encourage these folk to take it as big as they want to take it, And then I guess it's the same thing for me, right? Like I'm measuring myself in terms of, the impact I can have on this business, sure, but like on the individuals in the business is the bigger priority. On my kids, right? And, sometimes like Saturday mornings, it's like on my surfing, right? Or like on my golf swing, right? Or like on the few hobbies that I still protect. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to have profit and like business growth as an outcome of that. And I do believe that that's what will happen. But I'm a little more focused on like, those inputs as a priority right now. And obviously I keep an eye on the numbers, right? And like celebrate those. But I think the numbers is like feedback to the way of being that we bring to the table, the energy, the love that we give on my good days. On my bad days, which is most of them, it's like I'm like, oh, we turned a customer, like I suck, but it's not really how I want to be.
What haven't you said that you want to say directly to the listeners, either about your story or about the takeaways that you haven't had a chance to say?
I think the message is like, just find joy, like find what impact you want to have, focus on the relationships, focus on yourself, and like the rest comes. And it's probably a lot less of like a violent path with the ups and downs if that's like your POV. If I could do it all again, I'd probably try it like that.
Ty, thanks for coming on, dude. Sharing some of the game, sharing some of the journey. For folks who are listening that aren't already connected with you, where should we send them?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Ty Magnin, Tyler Magnin, either one. And then, Animalz with a Z.co. That's the website if you want to check out our blog or some of the content we put out. That's your interest. Definitely would hope you'd follow along. I think I'm biased, but I think we put out some of the best stuff on content marketing out there.
We'll put all the links in the description below. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. This is fun.